Hello and welcome to our webinar series on GSC AML inspections. This video will cover Enhanced Due Diligence. We are going to cover the following topics in this bite-sized webinar: EDD on high-risk customers, EDD on unusual and suspicious activity, source of wealth, and documenting the EDD process. Let's get into it. It is important to have measures in place to identify and deal with high-risk customers, business relationships, transactions, products, and countries in line with the code. The inspections team will want to establish how well you understand and apply AML CFT obligations and mitigating measures within your business. You will be asked who is subject to EDD and what triggers EDD. It is internationally recognised across both financial institutions and DNFPBs, including gambling, that identifying your customers and knowing who you are engaged with is crucial in the fight against money laundering and terrorist financing. All high-risk customers are subject to EDD. The inspections team will want to establish whether EDD is undertaken within a reasonable time frame of someone becoming high risk or in high-risk situations. For example, following the customer risk assessment changing to high risk, unusual activity, or suspicious activity. The inspections team will seek to ensure that any measures outlined in the policy and procedures are followed and that they meet the requirements of the code. The team may also ask you to talk through the process that occurs once unusual or suspicious activity has been identified. It is expected that enhanced due diligence is to be applied where unusual or suspicious activity has been identified, although the response should vary according to the specific level of risk and with due regard to tipping off. By knowing your customer better, understanding their behaviours and patterns, and scrutinising documents to ensure the information collected is commensurate to the information held on file, it will help you establish comfort or concern with the customer. Some examples of things you could use to demonstrate your effectiveness include documenting in your procedures, such as when and why EDD is collected. This includes when you would consider enhanced ongoing monitoring, and what is considered commensurate source of wealth, and what verification was undertaken on the source of wealth. Has the risk changed on an individual due to unusual or suspicious behaviour? What actions have been taken because of this? This should all be documented clearly. A good practice tip would be to keep records of key decisions made. This can be done in various ways, but this will clearly demonstrate that you have been effective in your checks and your decision-making rationale to the inspectorate. As part of an AML inspection, the inspectorate will ask about operator EDD processes, such as when is EDD undertaken, who does it, and who reviews the documentation. It is expected that you will be able to demonstrate what kind of procedures and controls your business has in place to apply mitigating measures against MLTFPF within a reasonable time frame whilst preventing tipping off. For example, GSC guidance recommends that customers have no more than 7 days to produce EDD, after which no further withdrawals or deposits should take place, and consideration should be made of terminating the relationship. The inspections team will expect to see evidence of those processes documented. If EDD is not given within a reasonable or established timeframe, the inspectorate will ask, what do you do, why, and how do you document the decision to undertake or not undertake a report? If there is clear rationale for allowing longer than 7 days for EDD, and the risks have been mitigated, this should be clearly outlined to the GSC to explain why guidance is not being followed. This could be that your business model means obtaining EDD takes longer. However, the risk of a longer term should be clearly mitigated and still within a reasonable time frame. The inspections team will review customer data samples during the on-site inspection to establish whether these requirements are adhered to. Some examples of things you could use to demonstrate your effectiveness include documenting steps taken to get EDD in a clear way. This can be done by adding customers who are asked to supply EDD to a separate spreadsheet or database, or adding a comment or note to their account that explains the decisions made. Some good practice tips include: keep it simple, don't overcomplicate the process. Document clear and distinguishable risk ratings, recorded on the back office and within the policies and procedures. Record the steps taken at each process and the outcome. This includes any reviews. If using acronyms, ensure you provide a table of reference to prevent discrepancies. Review any thresholds for EDD to make sure they are capturing players who should be higher risk. If you do utilise transaction thresholds for high risk, make sure there is a clearly defined reason for that threshold. Source of wealth. Regarding source of wealth, the inspectorate will ask you to explain the process you take to gather source of wealth on a customer and whether this is risk-based. It is important that operators undertake reasonable measures to establish the source of wealth of a customer as per paragraph 14(2)(c) of the AML CFT code. The inspections team want to establish if you are checking whether customer source of wealth is proportionate to risk, and the EDD has been carried out where needed as part of customer sample checks. This means not just obtaining, but scrutinising documents. There should be proof of a detailed synopsis of customer analysis, which may include payslips, bank statements, detailed open source searches, and reviews of the customer's spending behaviour and rationale. This is to ensure effective mitigating measures are put in place to reduce the risk of money laundering, terrorist financing, or proliferation financing. If the operator accepts virtual assets, the inspectorate will ask some questions in relation to this as well. The customer should be considered higher risk due to difficulties in proving ownership and attribution, therefore requiring more detailed source of wealth verification. For example, with regards to source of wealth for a customer, what additional EDD measures are applied to high-risk customers using cryptocurrency? If source of wealth is given as virtual assets, then the inspectorate again will expect a high level of scrutiny of source of wealth, which could include the use of blockchain analytics, and scrutiny of how the virtual asset was obtained, for instance, the source of wealth for large fiat purchases. This is due to movement of virtual assets outside of the traditional financial centres, and therefore difficulty proving attribution. More than just being provided a bank statement and putting it on file, operators should obtain and scrutinise documents, checking dates, the details such as employers, and establishing if this is commensurate with the player's spending behaviour. These checks need to be documented. Recording and validating steps, whether positive or negative. Recording detailed back-office notes to demonstrate steps taken and the outcome of those steps. Good practice tips. A good practice tip would be to consider the factors that resulted in the customer being deemed high risk, the value of the customer's transactions, and the period over which the transactions occurred when determining reasonable measures. Consider, does the customer have source of wealth that demonstrates affordability in line with transactions? For instance, is a retail customer spending large percentage of their income gambling or exceeding their income? Consider, does the source of wealth journey sound rational? For example, have they said they have paid employment, however bank statements show they are on government support for unemployment? Average income from jurisdiction to jurisdiction varies. Look at information about average wage. Does this align with source of wealth claims or affordability checks? Ensure source of wealth is commensurate with risk. Is the source of wealth verified in line with risk? For instance, a high-risk customer spending low amounts on low-risk verticals. In this instance, source of wealth could be verified using open-source methods only. However, high-risk customers with large volume or velocity of transactions will require more verification of source of wealth. By obtaining a wide range of information and documenting your steps, you are supporting your decision-making in a demonstrable manner. In conclusion, you must ensure policies and procedures are aligned with the code requirements, ensure the EDD process is clear to understand and is achievable, consider everything is documented with clarity, detail any open source searches conducted, record any reviews undertaken, and ensure back-office notes are clear and risk ratings are distinguishable. Finally, deepfakes and other AI-generated scams are on the rise, so additional measures such as requiring a video or selfie may need to be considered where you request EDD. For more information on the rest of the inspections process, please view our other webinar videos in this series.